Welcome back, everybody. Happy Monday. It's episode 49 and a half of the Leonis report. JB and I, busy, life, new meta incoming. We've been doing a lot of testing, this and that. As many excuses as we can think of, but we did not really wrap up exactly what we wanted for a grand episode 50 of sorts to do something just a little more fun and more than just a regular podcast. So today's 49 and a half, but it's still good to be here nonetheless. How's it going, man?
Definitely. So, tentative plan at this point is next week we're going to go forward with our another live show. So we'll do a live stream to celebrate episode 50 of the podcast, and yeah, like we'll say, we're going to have like some fun involved. So there'll be some surprises there. Hopefully, you guys can make it out. What do you think? Like maybe like 9 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah.
We'll start around that time.
Yep.
So yeah. Aside from that, the weekend was good. We had the eclipse today, which was kind of an interesting kind of world event. I didn't have like the special sunglasses or anything, so I didn't want to risk going blind or anything looking at it. But it didn't get definitely pretty dark here during the midday, which was interesting. And my son was super excited, about all that going on. So, how about you? How was the weekend and everything?
It was good. Yeah, the eclipse today was fun. We didn't do anything either, but it was like a surreal moment. My girlfriend described it as like a movie filter where, you're looking outside and it's just like gray and nothing going on, and then like it's like a second sunrise almost, like the way it emerges. It was pretty cool. But the weekend, like 16 hours worth of Final Fantasy 16, and I beat it.
Oh
So
wow.
I've been dying to get into Seven Rebirth, Unicorn, what's it called? The other tactics game and a couple other games, and so I wanted to burn through 16. I like fully completed it though. It was an excellent game.
Yeah, so I haven't finished it myself, so you like zoomed way past where I'm at. So you overall you really like the game?
Yes, it's not without faults, but it's a two thumbs up game. That's a worthy mainstream Final Fantasy title. I think of doing a video this week to see if I can like rank all my Final Fantasies just to see where it falls compared to the others.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I gotta catch up.
Worth it. But yeah, this week we'll talk about the lineup tonight. It's relatively light. We are going to do some discussion toward the end, but we have the strategist Oldoa vision card coming in. We'll go over that. The Final Fantasy 13 Trials of Reckoning and the item accessory that comes with that. We'll look at the +6 for Hope Scarf as well. We are also getting limited arena next week. We'll talk briefly about that and strategies and what our plans are. There's some limit break upgrades to discuss, a really nice barracks quality of life that we'll go over. We will talk about the impact of Jeume and Oldoa, where we kind of got this double whammy of top tier units. We did get a slight tease of a new Dark Esper in JP, so we'll talk through that. And then we have some really nice, like 5 open-ended kind of Q&A things from some comments that we saw last week. So yeah, a lot of good stuff for episode 49 and a half tonight. Um, but not the least of which, we'll talk about the new vision card coming out this week. It's the Strategist Oldoa. There's a real name for it that I forgot off the top of my head. But what are you thinking about this card? I know you have had it in here for a couple weeks now. It's called the Moment's Piece. Let's call it what the real name is. But yeah, what do you think about it?
Need to update that on the slide. Um, I like the card. Like it's cool. Like it's another card that connects Black Mage and Greatsword. Also Book and Greatsword as well. So, there's some kind of interesting teams you could play around with there. I'm not sure like how much it really enhances Greatsword for like immediately, just because we are seeing a big fall off in Magic at the moment. Obviously with Jeume coming in, that has completely changed our meta compared to what JP was seeing during this time frame, where kind of getting that new aged area resist there, the wide resistance for Magic was a pretty nice value add for the team potentially. All HP obviously always nice to have as well, especially on these big bruiser units, and Aldoa of course. So I like the card. Obviously has that really unique bestowed effect on there with the CT nullification as well. Aldoa has that in her aura for her teammates, but she doesn't have it herself. So,
Yes.
but we are also seeing kind of a drop off in the strike team as well, with Aldoa kind of coming in and shutting that down. So I'm thinking I'm gonna potentially wait on this card. It's tough to do because you don't know when those selects are going to come around. They're pretty rare, but we just got hit with 2 100 cost units, and Viz is starting to get pretty light. So without like sort of an immediate need for the card, I was considering maybe skipping it. How about you?
100% skipping it. I see really no value in this card at the moment, unless we go to that full five vision card orient, method, whatever the word is for Guild War, for JP that they're testing out. This is one that very difficult to get into a main slot, even in the sub slot, very niche in the magic area mitigation in terms of necessity, how much we need that. The elemental chain, as you and I were talking more recently, with this rise in rainbow teams, there's less of a necessity to have elemental chain res, which does not account for regular chain, like weapon type chaining. So although this is like okay, I think the game is kind of passing the elemental chain res by, where there was a time where like you were getting Starlight Helena and racking up a bunch of like light chains and stuff like that, and even we still see currently with wind, but man, like I don't want to say it's niche, but it's like really far down there in terms of survivability tools in terms of high impact. So there's not a lot that I
Yeah.
really like in this card other than the null CT down for the unit, but we are, as you mentioned, seeing that already go away. So I like what they've done with this card overall. I just think the timing is is not good for it.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, like in terms of like the new age defensive effects that they've added in the last year. Elemental chain resist, I think, is probably my least favorite. There are a couple of teams that it does like excel well against.
Right.
Fire evasion, Ildira, Yuffie can rip off some really nice chains. And then the wind pierce team is another big one. Outside of those, I don't really see a huge value add for it, especially at only 30%. And like when you dump that down into the sub slot, I forget exactly. I think it's like a
Yeah.
50% or a 60% reduction in it. The magic mitigation by area size as well, that gets hit super hard in the sub slot, just like as much as area resistance.
Okay.
So that goes down to 4% in the sub slot. It's only 30% efficacy. So like you said, if it's only like super valuable if you can get it into that primary slot. And at that point, like you said, we are waiting for I think 5 cards to come in for Guild War. I think it's a good skip for me at this point.
Me too. I
Even
think
even though I do want it.
I know, I know. I think the one cheeky little asterisk to it with the Trials of Reckoning coming, I need to look at the bonus things, which we'll look at today. But if this is a bonus card in there, the Holo effect here is a 25 crit damage for Quest. That I do wonder if that influences some of the min-maxing high scores in terms of people using this and putting it in there. But I think that's a really, really poor investment of resources to pull a Holo VC and insta-max it so you get 25 crit damage for a TOR event that, you know, yeah.
I think like it's the reason why I want it is like that's more important in the long raid for like guild raid stuff.
Right,
For
right.
Trials of Reckoning, I think you can get by without like the magic limit. Like I don't know, it may be important, but I don't think so.
Does Guild Raid count as Quest? I don't even know.
Guild raid, yeah, it should count as
Okay,
quest mode.
okay. Well,
So
because I know Guild Raid is in the guild menu. I didn't know if that counted as like guild. Because they think of like duel, right? Like free match and arena, like it's part of the same menu.
yeah, I'm 99% positive that guild raid is part of quest mode. So
Cool. Okay. Yeah. So overall, not terribly impressed. It's unfortunate, but yeah, not really a lot of application for it. And yeah, there's a lot of good units on it. It's really like I don't. The effects just aren't enticing enough.
100% agreed.
Yeah. But we'll move on to the Trials of Reckoning, as we just mentioned. Final Fantasy 13 coming in. The big new introductory item is the Chocobo check, which we will look at together here. That this Chocobo check, we know that the World of Calc at the moment has some difficulties rearranging all these attributes of who they belong to, but we can highlight what belongs to who. And so this very top one, the attack 30% is for Fang. Also gives her the AoE res of 10. Lightning actually gets this human killer and the AoE res. That's actually a nice one for her follow-up attack to get that extra human killer. The Hope effect is the magic 30% Spirit of 10. Not great for him. I would have liked something else, but yeah, next. And then I'm not going to overanalyze Hope anymore. And then finally is Snow. It's a 20% HP and the 30 elemental chain res, which, okay, cool. With the general effect being the crit damage resistance of 10, which is the newer mechanic that we've seen Zidane bring in and a couple other units. So this one kind of niche too. This is an odd Child of Reckoning accessory for me.
And I think what we determined, like when we were going back to our testing and conversations around the crit damage resistance, is that it should just be like a basically like 10% reduction in damage if somebody crits.
Right.
Is that
Right.
because when you're imperiling it, it was like 20% extra damage on your entire, like, basically at the end of the damage calculation. So
Yep.
it looks better than it sounds, I think.
It
Like
is much better
if
than it sounds, right? Yeah, yeah. But I don't know many people that have the crit rate in peril. That mechanic, I think, is so unique at the moment and not prevalent enough that it's a very odd thing to bring into the fold here. Yeah, I don't know, but because
well,
it's
it should work on anybody that crits against you. That's how I think that it should work. Basically, I haven't been able to use it myself yet, but I think that if anybody crits you, you're basically taking 10% off of that total damage.
okay, that's significantly better then. Okay, all right. I thought it was only for people that imperiled your crit.
No,
Okay, yeah, okay, much better.
it just works the opposite. That's, again, I haven't been able to confirm it myself, but that's how I assume it's going to work. Based on how that imperil works. So
I would agree with that. Okay, so that does change things rather nicely for general purpose usage. It's still slightly niche because crit rate mechanics are one that we've talked about. This a little difficult for your average and even top end player to really analyze frequently and in depth. That it's fine. What do you think about for the unit effects here? Anything that sticks out for like making a unit better?
I think that Bang and Lightning make out the best. Getting a big bump in offense and then a nice 10 area resist as well. Hope and Snow are really tough here.
Yeah,
The chain resistance we were just talking about, we're not huge fans of it. HP, okay, 20% HP, that's pretty nice, but again, like, that's a common trust stone. It's only 10% more than you might be carrying on a trust stone. And then, for Hope, I wish they gave him that area resist as well, and that kind of would have fit into what he's trying to do, stack that up and give him a bit more survivability. But overall, I think it's a pretty solid. Assuming that crit damage resistance works like we assume it does, then against those units that like to crit a lot, you get some nice survivability added in as well.
yeah. I agree. I would have done things differently. At least with some Trial of Reckoning items, there's usually one character that I'm like, wow, this is the best in slot for them. And I really don't see that for any of the characters here. There's ones that are certainly nice, but it's tough argument that you'll be using slot.
I think for Lightning, I would probably use it almost always.
That's fair. I just know her. They have kind of fixed her accuracy issues a little bit, but I know she was kind of like an Alex Ringer bust kind of unit for a while there, and this does change it a little bit. Um, really nothing there for accuracy, but okay, yeah. I do think she's probably the best one. I agree.
So I think they, with their +6 sword, I think they bumped up the accuracy on that. So I don't know. I mean, she might need, an Alex ring sometimes, but I think it's close enough there on the sword now.
I like it. Yeah, right on. And just to kind of talk about it real quickly, the Trials of Reckoning, they announced who the bonus units are, and it is relatively forgiving. Actually, before we talk about that, I'm sorry. The Hope Scarf is being rerun effectively. It's getting a +6 upgrade here. Really, just stat wise, getting a perk to its defense going from 15 to 21. That's really like the main identified build that they've gone with here. In terms of updating the item itself, they've added 5 human killer, so it's 15 instead of 10. I'm sorry, I'm wrong. No, that yeah, 15 instead of 10, and then they're
Yep.
increasing the stop or all resistances from 25 to 50. So, obviously a little bit better versus those limit breaks that hit the 67%. It's still not a guarantee, but there's a lot of units that have. I imagine out of these four, some of these innately, so this probably does get them up to the 75% threshold. It's a little niche, but okay.
I remember really loving this item back, like, around when it came out, because like Joker was, and Little Leela were around. They had the blinds. They
Right.
had, maybe Dark Fina was in there with her stop.
Yep.
And then, you had the missile and dark resistance on there. So it was super, super nice when it came out for that meta. As of right now, like, unless we start seeing some of these, statuses come out and maybe you're trying to use Fang or Lightning, I don't see much use for this item.
Not at all.
I mean, we can get 7% dark and missile on a trust stone. It's not, it doesn't really have the allure that it once did, I think, for those niche purposes. So this one's very much whatever.
Very much so. It's a niche item that just got more niche, and because it didn't do anything to enhance uh, what it needed. I remember Sadali was also popular then too, so that charm res was slightly helpful then. It's still, again, niche. I don't know. We don't need to discuss this to death. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Trials of Reckoning. We're looking very quickly at some of the titles. They did go with some of the Fang oriented titles for the high score stuff. So anyone that is a Fang fan, these are relatively cool. I like the shape of these. They kind of switched up the shape a little bit, which I thought was a unique design.
Yeah, I was thinking like the placards for these, like, yeah, it's kind of like the circular or oval type shape here.
Yep.
So that's definitely different. I like that.
Me too. It doesn't take much, but it's the details. A lot of the other ones feel like a boilerplate rectangle. They just like slapped a unit face on there, just a generic text, and called it a day. Like these actually have some personality to them, and the bonus units were again pretty forgiving. Hope being that free unit, being the only XL unit, and he's actually got some great PVE usage. So it is nice that they are incentivizing his use for the one time he really is good at it. But the rest of it, yeah, I mean, you have what 15 different characters here for that large bonus, and obviously you could probably fit in some of those mediums and smalls. Not a lot of new units, obviously Jeume and Oldoa, but the rest of these, a lot of people already have these characters built.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when I saw this list, is that it's pretty accessible for people to kind of get a max bonus score. You can, everybody's got hope, and I think that everybody can find 4 characters out of this list here in the large that'll get you that full bonus. So that's always good to see, because sometimes these come around and it's just filled with the most recent units, and you can't get that max bonus score unless you were a whale, basically. So
Right.
I do like this selection here.
Even the same with the vision cards. Obviously, Bahamut's chosen for the Fang vision card, but that is a popularly pulled card. Alexander's chosen the free one. Crown of Flowers is free. So yeah, the vision cards are very forgiving for what they decided to go with here.
Yeah, thumbs up here on the bonus selection. I think this is going to make it more accessible for more people.
Yeah, which it should, because if you're grinding for the Chocobo chick, it better damn be easy for the average player, because you're not really getting a whole lot for your investment. Let's be real there. But in terms of other content coming this week, we do have the new limited arena as well, which is a second time this has occurred. Basically, what happens is next week upon reset, we'll get 2 days of essentially, I think, free mocking, where you'll get a free amount of restores, nothing, no viz, no cost, no nothing. But at the end of those 2 days, the real arena starts. Everyone goes back to scratch, with the purpose being that those first 2 days you're supposed to practice, because you only get, is it only 5 or is it 15? Regardless, yeah, you get a limited amount per day. You can't viz refresh, you can't potion refresh, and so it really is like a true build the best team you can and beat everyone. I'm not excited that it's Jeume. If I recall, the last time they did this, was it Alaya when they did it?
Yes.
So
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, yay, Gumi! Like, do it the 1 week that it's the most meta unit possible. But yeah.
So we have seen Plane 7. I think it's a free match map, so we could actually pull that up and look at it real quick.
Oh yeah, 1 second.
Yeah, so we have this, I believe, in free match. So like, obviously the starting positions here will be different. Probably somewhere in that second row, probably spaced, three tiles apart. But yeah, I mean, you can see like it's a relatively short map across, just 13 tiles. If you're actually in that second row, you're going to be closer to 10 tiles. So just kind of that middle bank there, that you've got nothing too crazy. Like there is some jump twos that may be challenging for some units to get around, but yeah, Jeume obviously has jump 2 innately. A2 has it as well, so that's going to be no problem for them to kind of cut right across this map.
Yeah, we can already tell you what the meta is going to be right now, but it's still a fun concept of a game mode. I just wish they executed it in times where maybe you had some more flexibility and versatility with your team building. The fact that it was Brett Elia the first time, now it's Jeume, you're basically just getting a meta fest of who's min-maxing that unit the best.
And I mean, basically that's what's been in Arena the last 2 weeks now, because we had it last week, we're having it this week. Jeume is again the bonus unit with Oldoa.
Right.
So I also enjoyed like kind of the limited amount of uses. We talked about this, I think, in our state of the game as well. It does add like a different flavor to Arena, and I'm glad that they are bringing it back. I think my general thoughts was I didn't want to see it all the time
Right.
or like on a monthly cadence, but I think once every couple months is good for it, especially when there's some prizes and titles on the line.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. And we did also get some announcements here for limit break upgrades for three different characters. It's for Velric, for Amnelis, and Knight of Ruin Stern. And we'll go over a couple of these in no particular order. Velric first, who is a unit who has not seen the light of day in quite some time, other than like PvE content. He does have some good chaining capabilities. You know, the ice slash chains are certainly there to build upon. We'll see if the limit break, they usually go one of two ways. They either fill that niche or they try to overcorrect and go a different direction. For him, they're giving him a 38% slash imperil, which obviously does pop out. I know Gilgamesh kind of already has that, so there's some slight redundancy there. But obviously, 38% slash res imperil, nothing to sneeze about. The big thing here is the absorption, and this is more for the PvP content, I'm thinking, where when he was first released, this was a big part of his kit. He was one of the first DPS units that I can recall that really was like a regen health as the battle goes on kind of unit. It never fully came to fruition, unfortunately, but this certainly tries to address it. I don't think it's going to do a ton, but not the worst. He's just not a good unit.
Yeah, so it's definitely going to be nice for PvE stuff. You know, it gives him he didn't have any kind of imperil before, so he was just pretty much a pure chainer. So it does give him a little bit more value, especially because like Gilgamesh, like you mentioned, you have to use like a vision card to get him the chaining, and you only have two uses of it, so it wasn't always ideal for him. So I do like it from that standpoint. Like you said, he's already got the nice status effects on there. So there's a couple of nice upgrades here. I don't really love the choice of the absorption because his drain rush is already enhanced for like a 60% damage absorption, which I think like it's pretty much enough to like kind of do what it needs to do, assuming he's getting the damage out. I would have liked to see some, fallback mechanic where maybe it gives him that courage or gives him the re-raise so that, if he does take that fatal damage, he can kind of have another chance potentially. I don't know. I think this kind of doubles down on that one area that if he gets hit with healing power debuff, like he's essentially even more worthless than he already is.
That's a good point. Good point. Yeah, yeah, not great, not great. And honestly, now that I think about it too, don't both Ice, Howlet, and Rain have some pretty nasty slash imperils of their own? So even there, it's a little redundant in terms of the type of imperil.
Definitely Howlet does. He's got a 25%er.
Oh well, next.
Oh, not coming back.
No,
Not that he ever was part of the meta, but
no. Even now, tough sell, tough sell. But the next one is Amnelis, who we actually did talk about recently with the tier list conversation in terms of where she stood and some of the problems that she had from an accuracy perspective. And you had pointed this out back then. Do you want to talk about the limit break here now for the upgrade?
yeah. So she had kind of just a basic spirit imperil before. Was on a big diamond, which was nice. This is now giving her the 2P effect. When that we saw with her, guaranteed hit for 3 turns. It does come in prior to the damage, meaning that this is also a guaranteed hit as well. It does also give her that cast time reduction buff as well, which
Huge.
she did have, I think, available to her as a buff in her kit, but it was kind of hard to pull that off from her scholar sub job, I believe.
Yep.
So I think this is a pretty solid buff for her. It kind of, the accuracy angle has always been tough for her because her accuracy is horrible. So getting that guaranteed hit, especially into that fire evasion where she's able to kind of, maybe heal herself up, sustain for a little while with her heal back. And then, once, Yuffie's buff wears off, she can kick this out and start dealing damage on fire evasion. Will be good against earth evasion as well, although she doesn't hold up quite as nicely against those units.
Yeah, totally. No, I mean, I think they nailed this one. Obviously, the skill time is always a big consideration for these mage units with the Alaya meta in terms of interrupting them and overall turn order and speed power creep now. But the guaranteed hit, the thing about Amnelis, one of the big downsides is the lack of magic res pen. She has, if I recall, none in the entire kit. So in terms of like nuking power, it's really non-existent given how much the balance of the game has changed. And so turning this into a guaranteed hit, like you might be like, oh, I'm scared, like it's gonna hit me no matter what. But on the other side, it's like There's no magic res pen. We're getting these kind of vision cards that are the, area of effect, which this is a large diamond. This would have some damage mitigation. Overall magic res is higher, AoE res is higher, even like debuff weakening is there, so the spirit imperil is not as strong. So like there's a lot of things that this is not overtuning it by any means. This is a really nice one for her to ensure that she can actually be like a damage dealer.
And plus, like, her way to kind of get around magic resistance has been that pierce, magic pierce attack,
Right.
which has got that really long cast time. So this buff is going to help her get that out much easier. She should be able to get it down to a 1 tick with that buff
Yep.
very, very easily. So
And the last one here is Knight of Ruin Stern, who also kind of fallen by the wayside, really didn't keep up with the dark meta changes at all. He is kind of an evade-oriented unit that's a little bit squishy. He had some survivability tools in the MA2 with the, where was it? The Mirage for one time, but the, uptick in barrier break, although that is gone away now, so relatively speaking, he's a little bit better. But the limit break, what they're doing here, they're upgrading his largest diamond, and we'll reference it in a second, but they're giving him a 20% damage increase for 3 turns, and he's getting courage for himself here. The upgrade to the ability, so far as I can tell when I was reading this, I think they're just getting rid of the HP consumption. I don't think anything else is changing. The AP is the same, the height and whatever is the same. It's okay. I wish they did something more to enhance this ability, but I like the courage. I like the damage increase. The modifier, 240% getting a buff. The AP and the range, totally different. This is formerly a 3 square range. Now you're talking a 5 square range, so totally different in terms of like AI priority. I like the attempt. I don't think it's going to do anything for him, but I don't think it's that bad.
what I like about this is that this is going to match the range on his Hazard Rend, I think it's called, or whatever the diamonds. Yeah, that one. That's, sometimes he would sort of lead off with this one, even if he could only hit a single unit, just because it was his longest range ability. It would nuke a bunch of his HP, and he's only got 3 uses of that one.
Right.
So I like that this, if he's only able to hit a single unit, he's going to opt for this one because that 20% physical damage, it should roughly equal, along with the modifier increase here, it should probably roughly equal what that 30 defense imperil would have got you. So
Yep.
he's going to prefer that one. He's going to get that courage online early in the battle, which is good. If he's taken any damage kind of on his way in, he's going to heal that up with the absorb. So
Yep.
in theory, like that all sounds really nice. Unfortunately, like Stern and all of like these legacy units, it's nigh impossible to really use them, especially him as a 100 cost unit. So he doesn't even have like that cost angle that you could potentially consider him for like limited. So like outside of like community tournaments, I just can't see it. Um, I don't know. Maybe if like a light unit comes back into the meta, maybe he could be like in a great sword team that maybe as a niche counter. Other than that, I don't know. Even though like in a vacuum, I do kind of like the limit burst upgrade.
Yeah, same. And we see this frequently. The limit break is great, but there's a follow up conversation. It's what is there, so what? And the answer half
Yeah,
the time is no. Like it's cool, but whatever.
it goes into that conversation we were having last week with kind of the old stuff.
Yeah, which we are going to revisit in our Q&A. So we'll keep moving along here. We'll talk about the barracks quality of life. They're actually introducing a change for bravery and faith, where now instead of like 1 bravery or faith per hour, it's now per minute, which means you can get your units. If you start at 50, let's say when you first pull a unit, you can get them to 97 in 47 minutes, less than an hour. Um, it's not a slider. I know a lot of people wanted a slider just to immediately not have to wait, number one. And number two, just be able to, I would imagine for like testing purposes, be able to just like on a whim, just move it to like stress test damage and whatnot. So I think that's like in a perfect world, the best way to do it, quite frankly. But this is certainly a exceptionally good quality of life upgrade. I'm a big fan.
I am too. I can absolutely understand people's frustration when they see this and they say, why didn't they just implement the slider? And hopefully that's still the end goal. Hopefully they realize they need to do that. I'm assuming that this is literally just changing a number in a line of code for them. And this was something very, very easy for them to do without, some development with some art assets and, coding a slider and all these things. That obviously takes a lot more development effort. On its face, though, it doesn't sound like it's that much. So hopefully, like I said, hopefully they're still working on that. I hope that this isn't the end of it. I do like it though. It's obviously much better than what we've had since the beginning of the game.
Right. Or there's no reason why anyone should feel like they have to pull a TMR for brave farming for that half an hour in the morning when you pull a unit, or having to manually have Dark Fiend erase someone's faith casting the same spell. Like, that feels terrible. It's a year one thing. They've done a lot of good things with the unit affinity, the Esper resonance. This is another one where it's like, this feels like homework when you pull a unit, and it shouldn't. It should just be, listen, this is a simple number. Let me be able to amend it very quickly. This is a good way to do it. But we'll talk next about the Worm, because just talking generally about Jeume and Oldoa. I know, we both did character reviews. My Oldoa one is still pending. I was kind of waiting on that because I wanted to gauge the power creep to see if it like affected my valuation. It hasn't. She's still exceptional, to be honest. But we will look at least in the context of votive stats, this is one of the best overall all tools to see at a snapshot. Some pretty big swings in the whole game, but we'll say top 10, and then we'll filter downward and downward and downward. And so let me go to, let's say, mid or March. That'll give us like a full week snapshot. Pretty big uptick already in top 10, to no one's surprise. A2 is in 71% of defenses in the top 10. That's pretty stellar.
I mean, that's approaching, Helena and Sephiroth levels at their peaks. Not quite as high, but very close.
Yep. And obviously she's seeing a ton of benefit, not only for Jeume and Oldoa, but even just the Greatsword team. She was already very popular in that area. The Greatsword team with Astrius and Charles is certainly still viable. Even if you were to expand this into the top 20, I would imagine you're still seeing a lot of these similar trends upward. I think if we were to go 10 to 20, it's still relatively the same. You are seeing some slight downturns of people, but let me just do one last little upgrade here for 50. And you are absolutely seeing the transition of Helena going from that, 41% of teams down to 30% of teams. Like, it's a gradual change that people are realizing as this slowly increases.
I mean, that's like a true transition where if you're extending it even past like the top 20, even like when you originally had it at the top 500, we were seeing, quite a big impact on, of these units on the meta. So you can see A2 there passing even Sephiroth there in the top 500.
Yep.
It's even more pronounced on the attack side because, obviously people love their dark and light defenses.
That's true.
But Helena has been with us in the game since early December. It's 5 months that she has dominated, the meta. So it's time. I think people were ready to kind of turn the page, and the physical meta is here. Greatsword is here, and people are diving in.
Absolutely. There's been a lot of testing we've done this week. I don't think anyone has the answer yet. Obviously, map plays a huge factor as well. This is a very short range map, and these are two very speedy units. A2 and Jeume are exceptionally fast. And so a lot of these units that we mentioned this for like 2-3 months, they were a little bit slower. And so we're going back to these speedier teams overall. Really hard to compete with them. Forget about just how good their kits are, but even from like a map perspective in the X's and O's of who goes first and then who gets the baited first and this and that. And it's really taken on a life of its own.
At this point, it feels a little bit more fair to me, like than when we were first initially dealing with the Black Mage meta, where it was a struggle, like finding good comps, like very early on in that meta when they were first released. At this point, against this Greatsword team, it is beatable. It's not easy. There is some things in the game that do beat it.
Yep.
But it's finding the consistency. It's finding the reliability. As the opponents may be changing positions or changing buff rotations. The map obviously is part of it as well. It's those little kind of nuances, and you're trying to find the comps that can surpass all of those hurdles and be that reliable daily driver. Maybe some people have found it. We have found some things that are kind of getting there, but nothing that is really jumping off the page quite yet.
No, totally. And this at least feels a little bit better to me than Helena Vivi did, where Helena Vivi had so much randomness involved with it that it never felt good. A couple things come to mind. Helena's limit break, granting her the reflect, the timing of that interaction. If you have a mage that kills themselves on the limit break, like you can't really predict that. That's very much like a random mid-fight ability. Vivi's stun immediately comes to mind in terms of the randomness and how that happened.
Even still,
Even still, it's true.
yeah.
Helena's sleep is a major one too, where all of a sudden everyone had to use the same accessory for 3 months in a row because no one has sleep res, and if you get slept, like it's extra damage. Like there's so much randomness that never felt good. This doesn't feel necessarily great from the perspective that yeah, it's noticeable power creep. You can only take so many things against it, so you're kind of butting your head against the wall in terms of how many options you have. But it very much is just like a kind of a straight numbers game, if that makes sense. It really is just like, listen, they heal X amount, they have these amount of penetrations, they do have some self healing. But there's not without holes. There's no barrier break on the team, for instance, and overall, like their what's the other weakness? Oh, they are very healing power dependent. So one good healing power down does neuter a lot of what they want to do. There's also new counterplay with like defense pen down and slash res pen down. There's a couple units that do that will nerf their damage. So there's like it's more like a sustain and mathematical counterplay, not like a oh shit I got stunned and now I lost. Like it feels a little different.
Yeah, that's what I meant by it feels better, it feels more fair than that Helena Vivi did like very early on, where we just didn't have great tools to work with.
Yep.
So it was very frustrating, like kind of beating up against that wall early on in that meta. Um, at this point, I'm not sure that I mean, at this point in JP, when Oldoa was released, the Black Mage team came back and was very dominant until, pretty much these two new units dropped in JP, Mont and Jeume. And Jeume is just so dominant against the Black Mage team, and specifically she's made as a hard counter, basically. She has the sleep resistance, she has the magic res pen down. She's got all she even got like the healing power down that can kind of hurt Oldoa if you're trying to use her, and Helena's limit break obviously as well. So she alone is enough, in some situations to completely, like, I've seen her 3v1 that team if things go right. So I don't know. I'm not sure if that team is coming back in global. Not only were we kind of sick of that meta, but Jeume has been a very, very popular pickup. She was obviously our fan voted unit. A lot of people have been picking her up. We had I won't say it was a nice bundle, but we did have a bundle available that even if you didn't have some viz, some people were able to get her anyway. So yeah, I don't see the Black Mage train coming back anytime soon.
No, particularly because Vivi is limited. So, like, if you talk about that iteration, Jeume is a permanent pool unit that, at least if you're pulling Helen in the permanent pool, you're not going to be able to run, particularly because the Vivi Vision card is a major one that runs in that. So, in terms of future proofing, I think there's some things that can be said that Black Mage group, the whole game balance has changed too. Let's be real. Magic res levels are way higher. This new area of effect of like magic percent down is completely changing things too. So there's a ton more counterplay than there used to be.
I can see like a lightning mage unit coming in and actually one-upping Jeume. I can totally see that happening, and maybe Helena comes back at that point behind Oldoa. But Lightning has gotten a lot here in the last few months, and they were a top meta pick for months and months. So I hope that we don't go back to that well so soon.
No, me too. And honestly, I hope we don't, from the element perspective, I don't want to play that game still of like, oh, it's a water unit, bring a lightning unit. I want to get out of that habit of thinking, because there's so many other viable ways to approach building against certain teams. For those, I won't go into it deep, but I just ran today a warrior team it's Lucio, Bartz, and Mont, and it beats that Oldoa team of a handful of iterations. And it's one of those ones. It's like I didn't want to think about lightning. I wanted to think about like objectively. And so the more you can do that, the more I like it. I don't want to have Volk come in so I can beat Oldoa just because it's fire versus ice. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's that whole elemental counterplay that we've been doing the whole mono elements era. It's very, very stale. It's not as nuanced. So I totally get that.
And I think the game's actually doing a good job balancing around that. A lot of these, percent effects to say like damage reduction of 25%, that's the element bonus. You know what I mean? Like that's literally what it is. Yeah. So I like the way they're approaching it mathematically in terms of neutering some of the matchup differences.
Yep.
Yep. But we'll move on now to at least looking forward a little bit to the Leonis report, where we did get the announcement of Dark Titan, brand new Dark Esper for Earth and Ice. Again, that same combo where Dark Golem was initially introduced. This one obviously is prime for the Mont release, the Ashen King Mont. We do know a little bit about it. It's a unit resistance, defense penetration, and HP percent. Now I don't know the numbers. Not sure if you've theory crafted the numbers yet, but yeah, what are your thoughts?
So I think it's not a job card, so I don't think it should get like the enhanced numbers like we see on those. So I'm assuming just 20% unit resistance, 25% HP, and I don't know for defense pen like 20 maybe.
Yeah, it's a non-hollow, which is amazing. A lot of
Yeah.
people were very excited for that. Actually, the defense pen, I think you could probably look at Ifrit, Dark Ifrit, right? And
Okay for it.
likely even the Snow Vision card that came out. Snow's is 25 for defense pen. I think Dark Ifrit's the same.
So it's 25 as a main effect on Dark Ifrit.
That's what I thought. Yeah, and 15 on the sub. Okay. Yeah, 25. So I would imagine this is 25% defense pen, which is going to be in the main slot, considering that it's a unit resistance card. So that is a certainly nice amount of defense pen to layer in for Earth and Ice units.
And I think I heard that defense pen is also the bestowed effect as well. So you can kind of double up and it's maybe like another 10 or 15 as a bestowed effect. So I think Rulgia finally found his vision card.
Oh, that's actually a really nice take on it. I'll give you that. I still won't use Rulgi unless it's evasion. I can't get by that. That is only AoE in the entire job is an evasion down. Like if you can't get value out of that, I don't see much use for him. But you're right. That's a good synergy.
There's a ton of other units that
That's
can
true.
use it too. It'll be, it's obviously catered for Mont and getting him some additional defense pen. So, if you have the vision cards to kind of back him up, he's going to be very sound in his penetrations. Definitely.
100% for sure. But we will now move on to some of the Q&A, which is a little more open-ended. It's a lot of feedback and comments we got on some of the last couple of videos. So the first, and again, these aren't like specifically questions, they're more like thoughts, and we'll respond. But it's talking about the game balance, which we did last week. And for this user, the Holo Vision card hurts their account the most, effectively increases the cost of the game. Totally agreed on that point. Since Holo Vision cards really don't pull the new Vision cards anymore, the only exceptions VV and A2, which they had to pity, unfortunately. They promised they'll do something about it, but they haven't seen it yet. I don't know if they've promised to do anything about it, but we'll circle back on that in the broader conversation. What do you think about the overall sentiment of what the person's talking about?
I mean, it's 100% accurate. It's not even debatable. It's increased the costs for everyone.
Yep.
Not only are the cards more expensive in terms of pulling them, but we can't use stars on them, which we have to pony up another 4 or 5K for shards, which especially hurts on limited vision cards from collabs because there are no hard quests. We still to this point don't even have barracks or for vision cards, which is another pain point in terms of building them out. So yeah, I mean it's just a straight up 15K, maybe 20K more per vision card. Terrible. Obviously we talked about this when they first came out. There was some uproar in JP as well, which they did address it in a live stream. They basically said we heard you and we'll consider doing something about it. I mean, I guess they're still considering it at this point. We did get a free vision card, a couple free vision cards. That's nice, but they need to get the stars back in there for everyone, and it's hurting the entire player base, I would say.
Yeah, no, I don't have a strong opinion about what the answer is because, what I don't obviously yes go back to the old cost. That's a simple one. I'll agree to that. But the Holo is supposed to be a new form of vision card power creep because the effects are a little bit larger. They obviously do add some additional benefits. I would argue that they're not really worth it. But then again, as you accumulate the portfolio, maybe they become more material over time. But I agree. There's nothing wrong about what this person's saying. I completely agree with it. That's why I'm excited for the 5-person Guild War because we talked about this. We want to get value out of spending Viz for these vision cards. I don't want to put it in the sub slot and get a measly 7% that maybe doesn't do anything. So like I want those opportunities, and I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I can see why they did it. It's tough.
Yeah, I just don't agree with the double whammy. Like, don't increase the cost of pulling it, but then also increase the cost of building it, especially when we have such limited options
It's a goodie.
to
Yep.
do it like after the fact.
Yep.
So yeah, like have a give and take there. Like you got to give one of the two back to us, in my opinion.
I'll agree with you because so much more well said than what I could have said. And the second one is piggybacking off of a topic we had last week about the cost of 100 cost units and like how they fare over time and how they match up with new 100 cost units and power creep and all that. So the question is, or thought is, I wonder what you guys think about job upgrades for unique jobs only, where typically in the past they'd only done the job upgrades for the global jobs that anyone could really have. Um, this person thinks that this is likely more reasonable for the dev team than updating all the jobs a second time. I imagine they mean like the generic jobs. And it does address this more specific problem of outdated 100 cost units. Looking at you, Ganesh, I can see it being problematic for one reason that a lot of collab units have unique jobs. And I would agree, there's an overabundance of the number of unique jobs. If I could just kick off my quick hit thought on this, I feel
Sure.
like that's probably way too complex, to be honest, in terms of properly balancing every single job to address some needs. Because as we've seen with a lot of these MA2s and 140s and whatnot, a lot of times it's not even worth it. So if you're going to ask them to dedicate resources to, extend the shelf life of a unit that maybe doesn't work, number one, and number two, it's a gotcha game. It's not supposed to work. Now, you could have debates on how big the difference is. To me, I feel like the easiest thing is just a cost change. Identify this point in time X amount of units. We're making them 90 cost to call it a day. Because right now, they shouldn't have 100 cost pull rates on the banners. They should be more available. And for limited content, you're never going to use them. At least 90, maybe you can use them. Maybe even then, it's kind of debatable. So I feel like it's a way easier lift than all the balance ramifications of pulling levers. Because the next thing you know, you might get a Skahal issue where you do one tweak to a unit and you bust a meta unintentionally.
Yeah, I can totally see your point there. I remember thinking though, like when they were doing those job changes, that a lot of these like 100 cost units and like some of the units with like unique jobs, like Glaciella, for example, with her Valkyrie or whatever, they were kind of like the odd units out at that time because their skills weren't getting upgraded. At this point, like it feels a little bit too late, where we're already talking about maybe they have to redo all those old job, upgrades I'll get over again, just to kind of keep up with the current power creep. It's a daunting job at this point because there's so many new jobs that have been added even in 2 years since they did it. So, and even that one, that took them like a year, maybe like a year or so to kind of go through and refresh everything. So yeah, it's a big task. I can't see them doing it. I think they're just going to keep going like they have been and try to maybe give certain units more of a bump in the masteries. So I can totally see them going back and giving mastery threes. I wouldn't mind seeing a cost decrease as well, kind of like we talked about before.
Yeah. One sec. I actually need to break out the spreadsheet.
98%. That's the value.
That's the value. I, that's great. I love the tip to use Jeume's fighting spirit counter. It's the one that will have a chance to berserk herself, but because she has 50% berserk res, she will never berserk herself. So it's just a free heal, potentially. They did have a fight with the new Dario that's able to berserk her at 50 faith. What are the chances of that? And if there's any chance she'd berserk on her own counter? Now, the second half, no, there's no chance she'd berserk on her own counter.
And then the reason for that is that it's a 25% chance to berserk you on fighting spirit, and she has an innate 50% berserk chance or berserk resistance.
Right. A little bit different for the 67% chance to proc, where the odds of this happening, joked, but it's serious, 98% is the true percent, 90 or maybe 99 if you round up. 99% chance that a 97 faith Dario and a 50 faith Jeume, he is almost absolutely going to berserk her at that level.
Well, that would be against a unit that has 0% resistance.
Correct.
Um,
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Thank you. Jeume is 50%. The proc chance is 25%. So 21 in 4 chance. You just got a little lucky there. But you can raise it if you were to theoretically give her a Trust Stone passive for another 25. That would get her up to 75, and then there's no chance anyone in the game would Berserker.
exactly. Yep.
Yep. So that's the very rough math. Anything else you want to add on that?
Yeah, so like it's fairly easy like to do the calculation. You can just you add the two faith values together and then just multiply it by the percentage chance minus any resistance that the unit has. So 97 faith for Dario, 50 faith for Jeume, 147 times whatever that percentage proc chance is.
Yep. Yep. That's good stuff. So I'm sorry to hear that you got unlucky, but better luck next time.
It happens.
Yep. People already had doubts on the relevance of the water Veritas would have once people finally got to build them. With the new power creep of the 4th anniversary and what that's brought, how do you think these specific units are affected? It's honestly a good question. It takes a little bit of slight foresight, slight analysis. Have you thought about this at all for water Veritas in particular?
A little bit. I mean, we kind of said it when she first came out is like right when she came out, it was like the perfect time for her. Like Helena and Vivi were still being used pretty widely, throughout the game. And she's designed, to kind of counter their kits. She has like the ailment resistances. She's got pretty good like magic mitigation and magic barrier and these kind of things. She's designed as kind of that magic, anti-magic unit. Like that's kind of her bread and butter. She does have some other nice things like with the all element resistances. Like I think we said before, she's kind of like a water Sodali in that way with that buff plus the re-raise. I don't know. She has never looked quite as good to me as the wind version. He came in, he was great right from the start. Obviously, people have gotten to use him more, just because we were able to access and build him better. But I will say that, magic is not dead. Like it will come back again. And, maybe this unit can play some part at that point. Until then, she'll be like a decent water magic damage dealer, assuming that you can protect her. So we still don't really know the full picture of this unit though, because we don't know the limit burst.
Right.
The limit burst could have a nice effect that maybe adds to her survivability or, adds to her support in the team. So we'll kind of have to see what that looks like too before we really know.
I personally speaking, I still don't know her AI that well in terms of seeing how she does with this white mage sub job in terms of healing capabilities, because we've gotten new AI with the introduction of Soul, which is kind of like a midway point where he's obviously damage oriented, but he will stop to heal himself and a teammate. It's definitely unique from what most damage dealers do, and also kind of, I won't call it a pure healer AI, but like it's closer than people think. So I don't know that about this unit to give a like full confident analysis, but I will say at least with the power creep that we saw, it's statistically oriented. So it's yes, by that fact, this character is going to be power crept 3 months from now, depending on what we get introduced. But then again, we've seen time and time again, it's really the abilities that define a lot of these characters. And we've seen as meta shifts, characters come back in and out of the fold. And I think like Ice Howlet is a great example where he for so long really didn't have a time or place, and now he's one of the few units that actually does very well into this current meta team of Jeume and Oldoa. And again, he's rising tides. He's benefiting from having Oldoa introduced into the game and what she does to support him with the aura. But like that's the kind of thing that like it's kind of too early to tell, and it changes. It's the map, it's the meta, there's a lot of factors, but there's enough here that I don't hate what they do. I just don't know the AI well enough to know if it's all that good.
And on that same point, I mean, right now the devout group, as a whole, is on a downswing.
Right.
Like they had a really high when Soul and Amnelis were kings of the meta for a short time. Towards the end of last year, even early into this year, kind of before the near collaboration came in. So whenever the devout group kind of gets picked by Gumi to get a new character, I'm sure that this unit will be part of that and considered, in terms of what the capabilities are and how they work together. So, even if she may not be an amazing unit, whenever people finish building her in the next couple months here, I'm sure that she's going to have her time, down the road.
Absolutely. And to me, it's still the bottom line is these are free units, so I'm really not complaining that much about them. If you want to sweat for top 10 and spend all the viz to acquire them a lot faster, sure, then you're technically spending for the unit. But the other thing that it's hard to quantify is that these characters are very easily max reincarnated. And so we have to take that into account that these, for your average player, this is a very easily max reincarnated unit to kind of bridge that gap between a top end unit and what this character might normally be. That's a big part of their stats. The reincarnation stats are exceed the fourth anniversary power creep stats in almost all instances. So like that's another caveat to this, that those characters for your average player will get higher highs than what your normal banner character would be. Yeah.
Personally, I don't reasonably expect Gumi just to come in and give us 8 top tier meta characters for free. I just don't realistically believe that
Right.
that's going to happen. But
Right.
if these characters are going to come in and be, tier characters or B tier characters that I can mix in and I don't have to pull for them and I just passively work on them and get them a few months later, I take that as a win. I think that's a good value for the game.
Totally. And right. And it is, again, still timing based, but Veritas is a great example. He's been used in top level PvP frequently enough. He's one of the core features of that Dario Glacial team. I see him in Arena all the time. He's still a great unit. Water Veritas, obviously the niche is passed with the anti-magic side of things, but then again, she doesn't have to be anti-magic. We're thinking of her in that sense, but she's still a support unit at the end of the day. As long as she can like support relatively well, there's Shallow's effect. Just if you have a job and your job is to give 2 buffs and then just chill, like maybe that's all it is too.
But you have to remember devout, it doesn't have to necessarily be the devout job itself. It does work with other jobs also.
Right.
Great sword is a good connection for them. Spear is another great connection for them. The fist group is another pretty good connection for them. So their flexibility as a class is kind of how well they work with some of those other ones. I would say the same thing for the Earth Veritas. Like he's going to be coming in as a tank. He's going to be the first one that has a dual effective aura for magic and physical. I've seen, or at least heard rumors that he has kind of a Saul-esque AI that he'll prioritize his like chakra healing type ability and heal himself or the team when they get low. Very unique for the tank. It's kind of like a new age Engelbert, so that's pretty cool. We do know that the strike team is kind of on a downturn a bit at the moment. Does that matter for him? Maybe. But like I said, strike can work with other teams. He could be a tank for Mono Earth. He could be a tank for the night team. Like the Fist works very well with that group. So there's other possibilities now as we get more vision cards to kind of use them in other spots.
Totally agree. Well, we've talked about this. Tanks at the end of the day at this point, it's about their aura. Number one, is it a good aura? That's kind of like a defining characteristic. I don't really care what your damage is if you have a bustedly good aura, but it's about the utility they pack too. If he's doing minimal damage, no big deal. They're not known to necessarily do a ton of damage. They can, but I'm not going to judge his character in the context of strike damage, whether or not they're a good tank or not. Like their role goes beyond just strike oriented damage and that fitting into that team. But it's a good consideration considering that strike does have limited options for tanks. It's Alphonse. That's it. And yep. Now
Snow.
Oh yeah. And Snow.
We always forget about him.
No, but it's true. But Snow, yeah, it's another option. I like that. All right. And the last question. This is a great one. We've seen this like bubble up on Reddit a couple times in Discord as of late. I feel like another reason that Jeume was especially good or had to be good is that they had to break Water's global PTSD. I mean, outside of fire, Water's probably the most hosed element for a long time. Lightning units were always at the top end, and fire went to get milk and never came back. Even if a hyped unit like Asterius was coming, Esther would be released 2 weeks before. I feel like that has a lot to do with why we say Young King Eld was just overlooked, or the fact that Lightning stole Asterius 2 weeks later. There's definitely some merit to this. A lot of people do have a like water bias still, and for some good reasons, but I think those are becoming outdated. What do you think about the topic in general here?
I will say that fire has gone to go get milk once again, and I don't know if they're coming back this time. So
yeah, it's bad.
I think that the water PSD was well founded for a while, up until like the last, pretty much until Ferris and Glassy came into the game. That's when the book was changing on water. Unfortunately, because of Alaya and the fact that we knew Alaya was coming in and that PTSD issue, a lot of people decided to skip on those units and really didn't get to see what water has become now, which is one of the better elements in the game. In terms of mono element play, probably for pure mono elements in the consideration for top three, I'd say elements in the game, maybe even top one or two. Very, very strong with Eld and Glassy and all these like supportive bruisers that they have. And now we have Jeume, who is like a transcendent kind of unit, a new tier of power creep for the game in terms of statistics and abilities. So I'm glad that Water has gotten a unit like that. Like, I think that completely breaks that stigma if it wasn't broken for you already.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, to your point, Ferris and Glassy, two exceptional limited units. A lot of the red maid cards that came out along with them, also exceptionally good vision cards. I just talked about this in my Jeume review. I added a new section for like new player analysis, and I basically tried to look at what's available permanent pool. And yeah, water permanent pool units, pretty rough. Young Eld is the best of those units. They will say the water, I think, has the best vision cards in the game among for mono element. They have a slew of exceptional top tier vision cards. Obviously, the Dark Esper is inclusive in that conversation. I know there's that aspect to it, but well, Water's got some of the best Espers, Dark Siren and Ultros, two of the best Espers in the game. Some of the best vision cards. They do have some of the best units. Young Eld is absolutely slept on, and again, a lot of that was timing, where Final Fantasy IX is coming out. People were pulling in Max reincarnating Helena. A lot of people don't have Ferris and Glassy, so they were struggling to use Young Eld, I would imagine. But Young Eld is like the real deal. We've used him to some exceptional success in Class Match, in Arena, and Guild War. So yeah, Water definitely has more power than ever. Jeume is a big part of that. And yeah, it would be nice to have a character that can be on Elias level for a period of time for Water.
Yeah. I mean, and they can put out a character like this because Lightning is so strong and has been for months now. I mean, we kind of saw the same thing with the Earth elements, where Wind was very strong. They put out a transcendent character in Glaciella last year, so that they could put out a unit like King Bradley, around the third anniversary, and you had a very good character who could still kind of keep him in check, even though he can still turn the tables sometimes.
It's true. It's true. But no, it's nice to see nonetheless. Obviously, we like to see all elements get their chance to shine. You could beg the question, how long does it last for? Maybe there is a character that comes out 3 weeks from now that hard counters there, and this is all over. But I would be seriously shocked if that happened. I'll be honest. If they introduced a hard counter to Jeume like a week from now or 2 weeks from now, I would have some serious problems with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the creep already does feel fast. My hope is that this is just setting the table here for the next year of the game, kind of like they did with Sephiroth and Bradley at the third anniversary. They put out some incredible characters and units for some time. We're trying to catch up to them. I hope that this is what that is for this fourth year, and it's not going to be just some arms race here every month. Putting out some one-up character. Because at that point, it's just the power creep is way too fast for everyone, even whales.
Right. Absolutely. But yeah, that's everything we had though for episode 49 and a half. Again, kind of a light week overall. There's probably some showcases we'll end up doing in the near future for this meta, just to see like how it works. I doubt it's coming anytime soon, just because of the live stream we want to do next week. But I know we're probably gonna get a lot of questions and a lot of frustration of people trying to deal with this meta. It's very difficult. It's not unbeatable, but man, very few holes in that team. They're very well rounded. Yeah.
Let us know down in the comments if you guys want to see us do like another showcase video, like back when we kind of were trying to take down Helena, very early on after she came out. We can definitely try to come up with some fun comps to show off here on stream on the podcast.
Absolutely. But that's it for now. Per usual, thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll talk to you all soon.
See you next time.